listening to Reckless Creatives, a Pipeline Artists original podcast, where Sadie Dean and Jeanne Bowerman share the candid truth about the challenges and benefits of living life as artists. Hey, Jeanne here. I can't say, hey, Sadie Dean, because Sadie's not here right now, but she'll be back, don't worry. I just want to give a quick intro to the episode you're about to listen to. Super fun time Sadie and I had with Donald H. Hewitt, a screenwriter I met years ago back at Central Coast Writers Conference. And I just adore him. He's been in the industry for 24 years. He's written a ton of stuff. And we are going to talk to him about a new screenwriting book that he wrote. And before you say, why does the world need another screenwriting book? Don't you worry. I asked that very question right out of the gate. So you're going to hear all about that. But Don also teaches at USC School of Cinematic Arts and UCLA. And we're going to talk a little bit about all the stuff that he's doing, which is super, super exciting. And hopefully you'll learn something and be inspired. So here we go. Our conversation with Donald H. Hewitt. I'm going to start right off by asking you a question.
Okay.
Why does the world need another screenwriting book? Tell us what's different about your fabulous book because that's what people ask. Really? We need another one? Because sometimes, before you answer the question, I'll answer it for you.
Awesome.
It's kind of like with cookbooks. Like nobody buys cookbooks anymore. But when you did, you were just hoping for one recipe that you liked. That made you happy, just one recipe. So if there's one nugget out of this that you didn't know before, then it's worth it. Okay, your answer, Don.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jeanne, for that excellent question.
Bitch.
Which the answer to, I think, one of the main things is, as a screenwriting professional, and I've been working as a professional writer for 24 years, I got really frustrated with the books that are out there. A lot of them talk about these, do this, do that. And, if I'm working on a deadline, it's like some of the stuff is just ridiculous they want you to do. And so I've really developed a method that I think is very practical, really delivers results in a quick and efficient way. I think that's probably the best thing about my book is it's very clear and simple. The chapters lead to progress on a script, and they lead to, good work being done in a quick way. There's exercises in every chapter that are very easy to follow and will help guide you to writing a screenplay. The other thing I think is a lot of the other books are old. They've been around for a long time. And they still are basically right, more or less. But it's like if you wanted to learn how to design a car, and the books were all built to, about how to design a Model T. It's like, that's a car. But it's like people really aren't driving that car anymore. So that's the other thing is it feels like some of this stuff is really old fashioned. Like everybody's telling you write a 120-page script. I mean, and nobody wants to read a 120-page script anymore. You should be aiming for 100. So things like that my book's just more up to date and more practical, I think, than pretty much anything else out there.
I loved the exercises at the end because I've taken so many classes and read so many books, and you read them and you're like, oh yeah, and you highlight all through them. Everybody learns differently. But for me, unless I am doing it, I'm not learning it. So you've got like your thoughts on whatever topic, and then there's the exercise. I kind of feel like maybe you created it in that format. So like every story you're going to start, you could, until you really get the hang of this, you really could sit down and break your story with the book every time.
Yeah. And you really should be able to do that. I still use a lot of these methods every time I start working on a project. If I have to come up with an idea, we're going to there's one thing. I am a working writer, so I have things I have to get done. So I working on this recently. It was a classic movie, anime, and we're going to reboot it. And so I'm like, okay, what's our story going to be? And so I started working out a log line, started to see where, I came up with several. And then when I pitched those, I kind of leaned into one. And then I started working on my one page major beats. And I do that one page major beats pretty much every single thing, every project, like any of my own ideas, anything I'm hired to write, I will work out that one page because it's just there's nothing more powerful than being able to see that. Does your movie have it all there? And can looking at it on one page is very, very powerful. So yeah, I think the exercises, they come from me teaching the classes, and I teach at USC, I teach at UCLA, I teach at Writers Digest University, and I also do private screenwriting coaching as well, through my screenwritingcoachla.com. So I teach a lot of people, and I know the steps in my book work because I see people be successful over and over again. So
Mm.
I think that's for me the best thing is that other people are able to use it and really find success.
It's awesome. I just kind of to fangirl for a little bit, but and with your book too, working on movies like Spirited Away and adapting those to the English language, how much are you using those techniques that, you've put in this book as well, for the adaptation process and through a different lens, a different language, but staying true to the original voice of what, the incredible team did with Spirited Away or
Yeah,
movies like that?
no, it was an amazing experience to be able to work on Spirited Away and then to do the 8 other studio uh, Ghibli movies. So it was yeah,
Just 8.
just 8. Yeah, there's
Just
a
8.
few they didn't let us do, but we pretty much were on a lot of them. Yeah, I actually did get fired from one, but of
Who
course,
hasn't?
if you get hired in this business, you will get fired. That's something you should understand, and not, and it's a kind of complicated story. But the producers that had us fired actually called and asked to hire us again for another project like a month later. So it's not even like it was anything specific. But yeah, and as far as just the process, because I had a film already, a lot of what my this book is about is the foundation and coming up with the idea and going from the idea to a screenplay. So there's less of the kind of steps in my book that were used when we were doing Spirited Away and Howls and those. That's more just kind of relying on screenwriting experience and technique and having done it for a long time, knowing just certain things about tracking the character and storylines and things like that, and being respectful to the original material, and the culture and whatnot, and not trying to change the story, but trying to make it just more accessible to a Western audience. And that's really led. It was so fun to do, but it's also led to my current job, which I'm working for a company called Enlight, Enlight Media, and we're working on doing stories from like African mythology and culture, and we're going to be doing them anime 2D style and having them made in Japan. And so I'm working on the flagship film Mafinda, which is based on Congolese mythology, and we just got pages for we're doing a manga to go with it, and my boss is going to Tokyo to close the deal with Toho. Is they're going to do the Japan and the US theatrical release for it. So that's been a super, super exciting project. And there's a lot of other ones coming from Enlight that are very exciting. I'm going to be chief of story there. So I'll be overseeing all the stories and making sure they all work. And that's one of the things, my methods work, and it will deliver stories that are really solid and feel like you went on a great journey, and are really satisfying in the end. So
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And also that you're out of Hollywood. Like it's like you're working out of Hollywood. Like it's like thinking bigger, thinking different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, that's really been part of the whole experience for working here. And then my whole career, really from the beginning, started by working at Pixar, doing some stuff for them, trying to come up with some original ideas. So we were going up to Emeryville, then got hired to rewrite a short film um, that an Irish filmmaker had done that Working Title was doing. So we're flying to London to go do that, and then was sold a script to Miramax, but it was the New York Miramax, so we are taking meetings there. And it was like at one point, I'm like, why are we even living in Hollywood? Because we're doing work in Tokyo, in London, New York. So it was kind of, it's been strange all along. I've been kind of somewhat outside of Hollywood and doing a lot of different projects, so kind of all over the globe. And so, yeah, it's really exciting to be working, continuing that kind of tradition. So working with a studio in South Africa, we're working on studios in Japan. So it's been really exciting to just kind of have a more global story approach, I think.
Mm. Where did you grow up, Don?
I grew up, well, I was born in Indiana, and then I lived kind of like all over Midwest and East till I was like 13. And then from 13 on, I was in San Diego. So I went to high school
Oh,
in San Diego, and then I went to UC San Diego, which I started out in computer science, which is not exactly a normal course for a screenwriter. I was actually terrified of writing when I was in college. I was the world's worst speller. And back then you didn't have like a computer to spell check you
yeah.
and things like that. So, and you had to write papers on a typewriter.
Yep.
God, that was just like pure torture for me. So the idea of being a writer was literally pretty much the last career on earth I thought I would have when I started out in college. Um, but I found film school. I mean, the film program there, and that started me really being interested in film, and then that kind of led to me to finding writing, and it's been kind of a crazy journey. So,
I think people who are not of our generation, like when they imagine like having to write on a typewriter and getting white out, I'm not even sure there was white out. Like
yeah, whiteout felt like a great invention back then.
that was like
Holy cow, I
amazing.
could fix things on this page without stuff.
Exactly. And didn't the mother of one of the guys in the monkeys create whiteout, I think?
Yeah, she like based. I think she's based in Texas or something, right?
Oh, that's
Yeah.
Yeah,
awesome. I didn't know
Hey,
yeah.
that.
hey, we're the monkeys. That's a whole other, okay. I'm going down memory lane way too much.
Don, I'm curious because you have such a big background in the world of animation, and what you're doing, currently. Do you feel like there is a resurgence there for animators and for writers? I mean, it always feels like it
Great.
ebbs and flows and then just like blows up and studios go under and it's like, what's going
I
on? How do you make that a career when it always feels like it might just end at any moment?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's the whole, and almost any genre or any kind of approach of film is, it feels like it's a doomed process at some point. But it's like the kind of up and down of the whole Hollywood. I was just thinking, if you can't get in this career to hope to make if you want to like get rich, really what you want to be is if you love it. But as far as animation, I love animation. I think it's really it's kind of been a blessing to be able to work in this field. I think I think there's a lot of really strong reasons. I think one, the popularity of anime is really
Mm,
growing
mm.
worldwide, and I think that's something that Hollywood is just kind of figuring out. That's like, oh, there's this style of animation that is very popular and has very devoted fan base that really are really committed and strong. Um, I think something like I think Crunchyroll has really helped that. My
Mm.
daughter watches, like, basically that's all she watches is Crunchyroll now, and I know a lot of young people have grown up on that over the last So there's this really core fan base that's been developing for a while now that's really, starting to emerge. And then, I mean, I think animation in general, it translates better to internationally. And now that we're in such a global market these days, it's less of this Hollywood-centric kind of approach. And things like that and it's funny because they've known about that for a while in some of the some of the meetings I go to as far as animation. It's like, don't try and do like an animated Christmas movie or animated like any of the kind of traditional American holidays, because the animation they want a global audience, and it's there, so you need to kind of stay on more kind of like global stories that play across boundaries and borders. So
I would
My
have
son
never
is
thought of that, of like, don't do holidays. I mean, that's a no-brainer, but that makes sense for a global market.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And it's opposite. Like, if you want to write a Hallmark, you do your Christmas Hallmark, and
Right.
if that's, and I know a lot of people have done those and been very successful. A list of people I know who've sold that a Hallmark Christmas movies, not specifically to Hallmark, but sometimes, it's crazy. So it depends on genre and you need to kind of be aware a bit of the market, and what works and what doesn't. So.
There's a guy who comes into my antique shop who's he writes paranormal books, and he was actually talking to my ghosts at the store.
You
Cool.
have a ghost?
Oh my God, we have multiple, many, tons.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
one of them actually told him the other day, he goes, I don't know. He's like talking to me about tires. Does that mean anything to you? Like, and I'm like, oh my God, you're never going to believe this. But just this morning, I was looking at the tread of my tires because my mechanic had told me like a month ago I need new tires before the snow flies. And I'm putting it off because I just done like all this work on the car. And I was like, oh, I could probably go a little while longer. And I got in my car and I went to the store. And so I tell him this, and he goes, oh my God, he's telling you need to get the tires. Crazy. Anyway, so
That's awesome. You have a ghost looking out for you. I
I
love that.
know he's awesome. And so anyway, but he was telling me, he came into the store the other day and he's like, you would never believe me, this goth, he's always dressed in black with these rings, like he's really like dark. He goes, I love Christmas movies. he's like He's like, I just set up with the popcorn. I just watch all these Christmas movies. He's like, they're my favorite things. There's a wide range of people who love those things.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think those Christmas movies and those Hallmark movies in general have a real appeal. It's like comfort food. It's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to pay to go to the fancy restaurant and have all this kind of really, really fancy stuff. You want something you're going to like. And that's a
Mm-hmm.
very simple, basic need. So I think there's a reason all these movies are out there. There's a lot of different people and you have a lot of different times and tastes and things like that. So
It's the mac and cheese of TV movies.
absolutely.
One of the things that when I'm looking through the book is that I love that you also address is film school.
Yeah.
So I did not read that section because I don't want to go to film school. But so, and I know you teach at film school, but there's lots of thoughts about to go, to not go, to do you really need it, to not need it? And if you don't get in, you don't want to be in debt, like what are your other options? And so maybe give us a little breakdown about that, because I know a lot of people do ask us about that, like, whether we think it's worth it and blah, blah, blah. Sadie went, I didn't go, but neither of us are working screenwriters.
Yeah. I'm really happy with that chapter. And I think it addresses kind of all the different approaches, whether you want to go to film school or don't want to go. I think, there's a lot of different pathways to Hollywood. So I think, film school, it definitely is something that it can really help people, and some people merely make the most of it. And that is part of it. Is if you get in, you need to really work it and make sure you're maximizing your opportunities and try to meet as many people and get as much good work done as possible. But yeah, the whole process of going to film school or not, I talk about the whole application process when I go over the different kinds of creative writing exercises that they might be looking for. I spoke with I interviewed the head of the USC writing department at the time, and talked about the process and what they're, which of the different essays are really helpful and which ones are kind of like just their fluff. And so it really will get into the nitty gritty of that and that part of the application process. And if you want to be a writer and get it, that is really going to be the key. You do have to have good grades to get into the good schools. That's another thing. They need to keep that GPA up for the people they admit. But even if you don't have good grades, you can go other routes. You can go to a community college for a year or two. And I often teach students who have come into USC and they're a junior and they did 2 years at a community college and got in that way. So there's more than one path to getting in. I also mentioned all the different people who've had different ways of getting into Hollywood, whether completely skipping film school altogether, like somebody like James Cameron, who basically studied on his own, to other people who had careers in other fields, whether it be doctors or lawyers like David E. Kelley or Michael Crichton. There's lots of ways to get to Hollywood, but people in Hollywood are open to lots of different ways. So if you've had a career in some other field and cross over, that sometimes is a positive for the people. That you have more life experience, you've experienced some sort of other arena. That could be a real benefit. But it's if you want to apply to film school, it's an amazing experience. I see the people on a regular basis, these young people, and even like the masters. You see some people who aren't so young anymore getting into it and really, really doing well. So it's whichever path you choose. Hopefully my book will give you a lot of advice of what to do and how to pursue that, so that you can make the most of your opportunities.
Yeah. Like even when I was at pitch meetings at HBO and Johnny Depp's offices and Imagine, whatever, nobody ever asked me like, so where did you go to film school? Like, I was in there because of the project. Also too, you can go to film school, make great connections. I mean, my friends who've done it and it's helped them have been when they go to great schools like AFI or USC or, UCLA, but not like Binghamton Film School, because it's like you want to meet those people who are most likely going to succeed, because of where they're going in a more serious school. And as a parent, love the idea of community college for 2 years, take all those basic requirements, get them over with, get great grades, and then spend the bigger money for the last two.
That's exactly. My daughter's a high school senior, so she's going to go to community college. And I mean, she has really good grades, so she could go to almost any college she wants, but she wants to just go to community college and take that kind of like low stress, get your general ed requirements over, and then step up to the big school. So there's definitely a lot of different paths out there, and it's the book will help kind of guide you through the different processes.
So if your daughter said to you, "Hey Dad, I want to be a screenwriter," what would you say to her?
I say, awesome. If you love it, do it.
Read my book.
Read my book would be number one. Definitely. But it's a challenging career. But if you love it, it's an amazing journey. It's like a roller coaster. There are great highs. There are some pretty devastating lows at times. But if you're ready for that, and that's what you want, and it's not like, when I have somebody come in my class and go, how much does a screenplay sell for? If that's their first question, I'm like, you're in the wrong class, because it's just like, if you're in this for money, you think you're going to get rich, go buy a lottery ticket, because you got a lot better chance of succeeding that way. But if you're here because you're passionate and you love it and you want to tell stories and you want to have great characters, that's go for it. Go for it.
I'm curious, for the students that you've taught both in person and online, and after they've completed, a course or two or three with you, what is like the biggest, or maybe your just go-to business advice for them? Because I feel like, again, like they just we don't really talk about the business in screenwriting. It's just like, what are contracts? I didn't know how to do this. But yeah, like what is something that you kind of lay into them, like be aware of these things?
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a great question. I think, well, I have two rules when it comes to the business. And the number one rule is never send out anything until it's ready. If you happen to meet somebody at like you go to one of these film festivals or you're at a big event and you're able to pitch or something, and they're like, "Ooh," some producer says, "Wow, that's a cool idea. I'd read that." Okay, that's a golden opportunity. If you run home and send a script that's not polished, that's not your best work, you've just wasted that opportunity. You only really get one shot at that first impression, and you want to make the best of it. So, what you should do is run home and email or jump on your phone and email them and say, thank you so much for, uh, offering to read. I just got some notes. I want to do one last polish. Then call in sick, circle the wagons, turn off your phone and get to work and really get that screenplay to where it needs to be before you send it out. And then rule number two is if you get offered a deal, make sure you have either a certified agent or an entertainment lawyer look over your deal. I've heard of too many people doing deals and then really, really regretting them because entertainment contracts are very, very challenging. Where there's a lot of weird language, a lot of strange things that you don't even know to negotiate for, passive rights, things like that, that could end up being worth a lot of money down the road should your project be successful. So those are the two main go-to things of being in the business. As far as breaking in, I really, as far as, if you're in film school, really work the contacts, try to get to know people in the business, try to get to know the people who want to be like executives and producers, the people who are taking those courses. Because that can be a great pathway. All the young people who are on the other side, that working for the companies and things like that, the way they get successful is by finding that great screenplay. That really is their ticket to getting ahead. For example, worked on the film Spies in Disguise. That was a short film based called Pigeon Impossible. This young woman found it, got us hired as the writers to adapt it. She went from being an assistant at Chernin to being a creative executive there, and then she got hired by Paul Feig's company to be the president of it, within a year. So
Wow.
that's their ticket, is finding you. So so when you're getting started, you want to get to know the other people who are getting started on the other side, the interns, the assistants, and things like that. Also, that was how my friend, he wrote Sweet Home Alabama at USC as his thesis film. He got it to an intern at Original Film. And within a couple of years, she was president of production. What's the first film she wanted to make? The one she bought, she optioned as an intern. And that's how that got made. So it really, you have to think of it, there's other people on the other side who are just as anxious and excited to find that material, to find your material. So that's one of the things, is getting to know them. And also just all these pitch fests and contests these days, it's still kind of the primary way to get discovered, is to have your screenplay place highly in a screenwriting festival or screenwriting contest competition, or going to these pitch fests and pitching. Which, if you're going to go pitch, make sure you read my book and make sure your log line is as strong as possible.
Yeah, and even for email queries, I mean, a lot of times the managers will tell us they hone right in on the log line, and that makes or break everything. I also love that you actually have a section in your book on internships, because if I had started, into my writing career earlier than I did, that seems like a great way I mean, you're going to be eating Fruit Loops for dinner, but
Yeah. No, internships are really critical. Even if you want to be a creative and be a writer or a director or something like that, actually spending, a summer or a whole year working at one of these production companies or a studio or for just a big producer or even the agencies. I mean, it's a grind to work at some of these places, but you will learn so much and you see what they are looking for when you're on that side. You start to understand what it is that attracts them to a certain story or and whatnot. So and you just kind of instinctually you'll probably end up reading a lot of scripts. Most of them will be horrible, and you'll read a lot of, like, you'll figure out what not to do and things like that. That should be something you should be doing right now anyways, just reading a lot of scripts.
Mm.
It's such an amazing opportunity that they're available on the internet to download for free, especially around this time of year. If usually if you can just Google award screenplay download, you find people are putting lists together of all the movies that they want to win Oscars. They're putting those screenplays out and want people to read them. They become available. It's a tremendous opportunity to read really great stories, see what the newest, the professionals that are really being successful right now, how they're writing. When I started, there was like two bookstores in LA. That was like the only
Mhm.
place on earth. Or you worked on a movie, you worked on a production, and you grabbed a copy and you ran to a Xerox machine and you photocopied it for you and your friends. You make 5 copies. So you could have a screenplay to actually like hold in your hands and read. I mean,
Yeah.
it was so hard to get a hold of one back then, but now you can just download all kinds of them from almost any genre really. Please read screenplays.
Do you remember the first script you actually read? Like, I remember I never read a script before, and I had a friend of mine from college who convinced me, oh, let's write a screenplay together. And she sent me a script that she had bought on like eBay because you couldn't get screenplays. It's incredible now, like how many resources there are. Or even when I first started Twitter, or when it was Twitter, not X, like in 2009, shortly after that, there was a woman who was getting sued for like $15 million by one of the big studios because she had a writing group and they were found these screenplays and they were sharing these screenplays with each other and they were suing this little writer for like $15 million because she was distributing the IP or whatever. She won. Like they didn't get it. But then once that happened, then ever after that, after she won, and then it feels like that was like a lot of people were like, okay, I guess we're just gonna let it go and let people read the screenplays. Like,
Yeah. It's good, crazy the shift of that because sometimes they used to publish them in books, and you still can buy them in bound like on
yeah.
Amazon and things, or if you still can find a Barnes and Noble or something that's still open in your neighborhood, or so those the published ones are nice. They tend to be really clean, but then there's something about reading it that's like the way the people on the set are reading them, that bound copy of printed pages. And people hardly ever do that anymore as print a script, but it is it is really exciting to hold that screenplay in your hands. I remember, I think the first one that I read was actually the movie I worked on. I worked on a feature film I was a intern and I came up to LA and worked on it. It's called Beverly Hills Body Snatchers. It's like some wacky reanimated, bringing bodies back to life, and it was really funny. Funny, it was John Mostow, the director. It was his first film, um, so it was fun. It was like a lot of young people were working on it. They had just all graduated like Harvard or something, and it was.
That's wild. So when you finish a screenplay, do you print it out for yourself, like to read printed?
I used to always do that. I mean, that was a huge part of my process. And the one other book I do recommend is Jack Epps' Screenwriting is Rewriting. Jack Epps Jr. He wrote the original like Top Gun with his partner, and he was a head of the writing division at USC. Um, that he tells you that you should print it out, and when you finish, print it out and then read it in one sitting and just mark it up by hand, and just make notes literally on every page. This is good. This is bad. Circle this. I love this. I hate this. Need to trim. All these kind of things. So I think I've gotten to where I still like to have it printed out, but I've gotten really good at just I knowing how to edit myself without just like, because like most of the time when people do rewrites, they don't do them right. And I don't get into this in my book, but most people just start on page one and just start reading, and they just are wordsmithing and just kind of trying to polish it up rather than reading it as a whole, really stepping back, thinking, do these characters work? Does the story work? And really asking the big questions. And that is something I do in when I'm doing the screenwriting coaching. I have when I read a script for somebody, I look at everything. I look at, the structure, the characters, the flow, every aspect of the screenwriting that's going on. That's one of the things about screenwriting is there's no real secret. There's not, like, some people seem to think there's this secret advanced calculus version of screenwriting, that there's these rules that the professionals know and understand that are being hidden from people. But that's just not true. Like you were saying, Jeannie, earlier, when you're reading or listening to somebody talk about screenwriting, you're like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, it all sounds simple. It all sounds really basic. And a lot of it really is. The problem is you have to do like 1,000 things at the same time in the same document, all working together. So it's just a lot of little things. And I think that's one of the things that can make screenwriting frustrating for people, is you could be doing so much right, and yet still be missing this or that, that's just making your script misfire just that a little bit, that keeps it off the mark. And so that's where having done it for so long and being professional, I see all those little things, and I can kind of track everything when I'm reading a script that just a lot of people just don't realize is that this is working or that's not working, and what it is. So,
and also like making the audience care. Like I like that you address that in the book. Like, how do I make them care? And when we talk about printing scripts out, when my friends used to ask me to read their scripts, please don't ask me anymore, people, but I would print it out and I would write in it. The first pass, I would just focus on, what am I feeling in this scene? And I would write in the margins, like, this is what I'm feeling. Like, I'm anxious. I can't wait to turn the page. Or I just now don't care what happens to this protagonist. They can just drop off the face of the earth. And actually, I kind of want them to. Like, I'm not interested in following them. I hate them. And then I would snail mail it to them.
Yeah.
And but while they're waiting for it to come in the mail, I would send them an email with my thoughts. And this one guy I remember was crying. Like, he tweeted out, "Oh my God, I'm crying. Oh my God, just got ripped apart." And I was like, "Oh my God, no." But then when he got it in the mail and he read it and saw what I was talking about and what I was feeling as I was reading it, he immediately like thanked me. Like, I get it now. Like, I get, like, it's like looking at it from the perspective of a reader, not of the writer. And I think we as writers can be writing something and we've looked at it so many times, we can't see the forest for the trees. So one thing that people always say to us is like, I don't want to hire somebody, a script consultant or whatever. Why should I pay? Kids, it's like hiring a tutor for physics. Like, sometimes you just need a second set of eyes of somebody who understands what they're looking at and is not you or your mama.
Yeah. No, I think that's the thing is screenwriting documents are meant to be read, and they're meant to be shared. And so you really, you don't know how it's working until you have other people read it and let you know their feelings. And that's one of the things I really highly recommend is, staging a reading when you get done. and having everybody. And it's,
Mm.
it's great to meet in person, have a little beer and wine and some pizza, and meet in person that back in the old days. But these days you can still do everything on Zoom. And you can have people all over the world reading your script. It's really exciting, really fun. It's also really terrifying. Those moments where it starts to get slow, you're like, oh God, the script is getting slow. I can feel it. It's just so it's something that's very, very essential is learning how to, you know, listen to the screenplay. And like you said, Jeannie, it's really hard to know yourself. It takes a lot of training to learn how to turn your brain off and go, okay, how am I, if I'm reading this for the first time, what is happening, and how am I, is it the right amount of information? Is it too much? Is it not enough? And that's really, I mean, screenplays are just a big thing of information, and you're trying
Mm.
to like make that exciting and make it like a trail of breadcrumbs where each little breadcrumb just falls just the right amount of space to keep that person moving forward and reading and excited to get to the next breadcrumb. Thank you for mentioning the getting the audience to care chapter in my book.
Mm.
I think that's a really essential part of it, because producers will ask, "Why should I care?" And you're like, "Oh my God!" You just want to punch them in the face. Uh,
Because I care.
Great screenplay. That's why. But really, what they're talking about is character, and
Mhm.
like people care about characters. People fall in love with characters, and so you really have to be conscious of that and try to really, they talk about save the cat, but that's not the only thing you can do to have people really start to like a character and get behind a character. So I have a whole chapter devoted to that, of all kinds of different techniques that can really engage an audience and get them caring about your character. And so I think that's a really essential part of storytelling.
I was just actually having this conversation with my husband last night about TV and characters and how this day and age we feel like there's like less and less connection to characters. But we were talking about like Home Improvement, where like Wilson, you looked forward to seeing some of his face, and like there was just something that you just fell in love with these guys, and you look
Mhm.
forward to seeing them every week. And now you're like, there's so much stuff out there now. What character am I rooting for? That's just all plot, and then they kind of amble around and fumble around, and then the episode's over, and you're like, great, why did I just waste an hour watching this?
No
So
doubt.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think, and that's an interesting thing that you mentioned about Home Improvement, with that, like withholding information, like not being able to see his face. It's like it draws us in. We want to know more. And that's one of the
Mhm.
real keys to screenwriting, is giving some, but holding back. People so often like, I need to explain this. I need to, like, explaining is not storytelling. If you have to
Mhm.
explain your character, explain the situation, you are boring people. And it's like giving a history lesson. You want to hold that information back, get people excited, draw them in, create these mysteries. Like, I want to see Wilson's face. So it's like,
Mhm.
it's like you got to make them want something. And that means
Hmm.
giving some information, but holding back other pieces. So
Did they ever reveal his whole face before the show was over?
I think in the finale they did. I think he came around, but I don't
We're gonna have
remember.
to we're gonna have to look that up. Sadie, you make a really good point about characters, because I feel like so much of what we're watching these days are limited series.
Hmm.
So and sometimes they get picked up like Ozark for another season or whatever, but there was something so magical. Again, I'm taking you back in time, in the time machine, that was so magical about, you couldn't watch Seinfeld until it was Thursday night at 8 o'clock, and everybody got to their TV and, to watch it. And you wanted to follow these crazy people every week and find out what stupid thing they were going to get involved in next week. There's not that anticipation anymore. There's not
Hmm.
that,
yeah.
everything is instant gratification. Do you think that has really affected how storytelling happens now?
I think to a degree, and it's interesting because I think really it's about character. I think Game of Thrones is probably the last time I remember a show where people were like
Mm.
anxiously awaiting the day when each episode would drop. But I
When their
think that,
favorite character would get killed.
yeah, exactly, or they're tortured or something
Yeah.
horrible. Um, I think and I think the thing is that and if we go to Game of Thrones, it's really interesting how they really take the long run on a lot of those characters and really
Mm.
spend a lot of time developing them and really changing them throughout a very long, slow course. Um, you look at the Kingslayer. I mean, he's having sex with his sister, and he pushes a boy out a young
Mm.
boy out of a fourth-story window, and you're like, by the end, you're like totally rooting for him, and you love the guy,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, how did they do that to me? You know, how do we make
Mm-hmm.
this like this guy? So it's a very long play when you're doing that, and that's one of the things is you can't do that in a screenplay. You need to be more efficient and quicker with your characters and reveal and getting to character setups that are stronger. I think if you're looking at television and thinking which one, I think Breaking Bad, that pilot,
Mm.
and I mentioned that this one in my book a lot, is so tight, and it actually has movie format to it, even though it's a 1 hour. You see like a perfect midpoint, and like there's an amazing character arc. He has a character arc in that is going to be again repeated throughout all the seasons as he arcs and becomes the drug lord. What's his name?
I know I can't remember his name either, but I know what you
Heisenberg.
mean. Yeah,
Yeah.
Heisenberg.
Yeah, as he goes from Walter White to Heisenberg. But I mean, in the pilot, when he's buying pants with his wife and for his son, and the school bullies show up, and he walks out, and you're like, oh my God, what a loser! He was leaving his son, and then he comes back in the other way and just stomps on that football player, and and if you read the script, it's amazing because it points out Walter felt something he never felt before, and it's like this total lack of fear, and he liked it.
Mm.
It's this idea that he suddenly had terminal cancer, and he didn't care if he died or not. He suddenly
Yeah.
it was this fearless character, and that's an amazing character arc right there in that in one scene. I think that's the thing is with screenplays, feature screenplays, you need to be able to get that character stuff in and get the characters up and going faster. They you have more space in these features, I mean, in the limited series and even the longer running series. Um, you have so much time to like kind of learn a little about the character, then a little more, and a little more, and then kind
Mm-hmm.
of do this with the character. Like you just don't have the time to do that in a feature. It needs to really move quickly or to be successful.
I'm going to try to find that pilot script if we could put it in the show notes along with all these other things we've talked about.
Oh, yeah.
Because now I'd love to read that because that was like, I remember, I'm sure Sadie has done the same thing with her husband, where my husband sometimes will say to me, oh my God, you just ruined all entertainment for me because you would be pointing things out. But at the end of every scene, I would pause the TV and I'd say, see what he just did there? And he's like, God, I just want to watch a show. And
Yeah,
I'm like, he asked himself, what is the worst thing that I could make happen here? And then by the third episode in, he's like, oh my God, look what he just did.
yeah. No, it does kind of like when you first start learning about film structure and that it does kind of ruin your viewing experience because you start thinking like, oh my God, that's the first act break, and so I've learned how to kind of turn that off and just
Yeah.
watch a movie the first time and just like okay, but at the same time I still like I'll sit in the theater and I'll like just peek at my phone to see what time it is. I'm like, okay, 11 minutes in, inciting incident. That's on the money. This like perfectly structured story, and then there's also the times where you're sitting in the theater or something, and you're like, where are we? What's happening?
Yeah.
And they're not hitting those beats, and you feel like, what time is it? Like,
Yeah.
just
What am I doing here?
yeah. And so it really that's such a crucial part of the storytelling is knowing how to hit those major beats and making sure that your story conforms. Because we have this clock in our head when we're
Mm,
watching something where like something should be happening. Oh, there it happened, and it's like we're not
mhm.
usually conscious of it, but if it doesn't happen, you start to become conscious of it. It's like, what's going on? Where is this? You get all frustrated because we want that. We've been so kind of tuned to it. We really require those beats to happen.
Yeah. Like you can't now unsee and not understand anymore that moment in Jaws where he says, we're going to need a bigger boat.
Right.
You know, I mean, that's like a big turning point, like the oh
Oh yeah,
shit
that is
moment.
the classic midpoint of like, oh shit, this problem is way bigger than we thought it was, and
Yep.
the stakes are way higher.
Yep.
So,
It's like perfect.
yeah.
Perfect. But when I first watched Jaws, going back the time machine, it was in a theater.
And it was,
When I
yeah,
was a
you're so
kid.
focused and so entertained, and yeah, I mean, I think that's the beauty of the great films is you're so involved, you don't think about any of those things, you just enjoy it, and you're just taking on that ride, and it's just amazing. So yeah, I'm trying to go back and watch more and more of the really, really great movies. So that's become my
Yeah.
goal. I'm watching less of the series. I'm going to go back, and I'm focusing right now on 1999. What an insane year that was. That was
Oh,
so
wow.
many good movies.
Wow. And Jaws also forever changes you anytime you step into the water. Like, like I remember being afraid to swim in my little farm pond after Jaws.
Yeah, no, my mom wouldn't let us see it when I was a kid for quite a long time. So I didn't see it till I was definitely older. Yeah, yeah. No, I grew up and moved to San Diego and started surfing. So
Oh, yeah, there you go.
it's always like in the back of your mind though.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
But that's like the power of storytelling, you know, it affects you forever. Like
Yeah.
you know, some of those films. Okay, Don, normally we always ask people like, as our final wrap up, like if you could go back in time and, you know, what would you want to know or what would you tell yourself? But I actually want to ask you a completely different question. If you're willing, maybe share some of the mistakes you made, because I think a lot of people think, oh yeah, he's made it, he's been a professional screenwriter for 24 years, he must have done everything right, and that they feel like they're the only ones. Like when you said always, you know, you only have one shot at first impression. One of the biggest mistakes I ever made was we finished writing our very first script, very first draft of a very first script, and I used a very big connection that I had. Exactly. For you people who can't see, Don just put the most pained look on his face. And then this was when you had to mail scripts. And so we mailed it. And then weeks later, we get back this thing. And probably only because I had a personal connection to this very high person at Lionsgate. And there was a handwritten note basically saying, this is the shittiest damn script I've ever read. Full of cliches, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, I was so excited because I was like, somebody read it. But so that was my big mistake. Don't do that, people. But like, maybe
that's my number one rule. Don't send something.
I know.
Yeah.
Your book wasn't out back then, Don.
No.
So like, maybe just to give us a mistake, like one that you were like, if I could go back in time, or because it's by mistakes that you learn.
Yeah.
So maybe we shouldn't call it mistake. We should call it a lesson.
Yeah, I know. I think I would really force myself to be more active, like with my agent and managers back in the day. I think there was opportunities that slipped by that really, you know, it's very frustrating for me to think. It's like, oh my God, why didn't that deal happen? Why didn't this happen? An example would be one of the Ghibli films we worked on was Porco Rosso, and Michael Keaton did the voice of Porco. And it was an amazing experience. He is so funny and so much fun. And we really connected with him. And so, you know, so I thought, okay, he might, you know, really want to do something down the road. So this is back, printed a script out. I brought it the next day. And then at the end, he's like, you know, if you guys ever want me to read anything, you just let me know. I'll read anything you write. I'll read anything you write. And I go, read. And I pulled out a script. I go, here, read this. and he's like, you want me to read this one? Yes, read that one. This script. Yes, read that one. So he read it and got a call like 10 days later that Michael wanted to meet with us and he was on another movie set. And so went over there and he wanted us to write Beetlejuice too. And so I, you know, came back of like 10 days later, pitched 3 ideas, and he loved all 3 of them. He's like, I don't know what to say. They're all great. They're amazing. And so let's get you into my manager, and we'll get you into Warner's, and we'll get this going. And so then we met with his manager, and his manager's like, yeah, Michael's right. These are all really strong ideas. And then we were supposed to go to Warner Brothers and get that set up. But then the week we were supposed to go, the executive in charge of the film was went into drug rehab. And so we didn't meet with anybody. And then it just weeks went by and weeks went by. And I should have been calling my agent saying, just get us into somebody, just get it like this, we need to be doing this. And for whatever reason, it just drifted off into space and never happened.
Yeah.
And that was just like, that was a monster opportunity. And somehow my agent let it slip away. And so I should have pushed more and pushed him to make something happen at that point, because it's like those opportunities don't come by very, very frequently. So I just think I wish I would have pushed more. I wish I would have been more kind of vocal in advocating for myself and for us, and just stay on top of those things. Don't let them slide. So that would be the number one advice. If you get opportunities, really stay on top of them and don't let them slip by.
I think that's such important advice, even in life in general, is like to trust your spidey senses. A lot of mistakes that people make are because they're not trusting every intuition they have, and to be your own advocate, because nobody's going to do it for you.
Yeah. You think, oh, that's the agent's job, but really, they're just, I don't know, they get too busy, they get too caught up in this or that, and you really need to be involved and make things happen as much as you can. But don't pester people, because this is another thing you got to be careful. It's like, I remember I was working with this one producer, and he said, yeah, just send me what your list of projects. So I sent him my list, and he was reading down it, and there was one he was really excited and interested. And then he read I co-wrote it with this other guy, and he's like, nope. He's like, I had talked with that guy about a project, and I will never deal with him again. And the guy started like emailing him like every single day, sometimes more than one time a day. You got to be, not bug the shit out of people. It's like, just do not do that. There's advocating for yourself, but in the way that is helpful. So you have to find that sweet spot of, being there, but not being annoying. So,
yeah. So Sadie, before we leave, you have to share your mistake, because it's only fair. We're in group therapy here.
Well, mine is actually pretty similar. It was when I was in film school. I wasn't checking my emails, and I was offered, I didn't know this until my writing mentor kind of pulled me aside and was like, why are you not responding to this person? I set this up, and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. But it was to be like a writer's assistant on, what was it, like Brothers and Sisters, that TV show that was out in early aughts. I just never checked my email then. And so I just kept missing all these opportunities. And I was like, oh my God, I have to be more diligent about like actually going in, and because I wasn't a computer person. So that was a big thing. And then also just coming out of grad school, we had a lot of opportunities to have people read my stuff. But I got so mixed up in like, well, it's not ready, it's not good enough. Why would they want to read my thing? So I'd respond like, okay, I'll get it to you. And I just never got it to them, because I was just in rewrite hell of just like, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. And then, those contacts move on, they're not interested anymore. So yeah, same thing.
Yeah. No, there is the flip side. I've known people who work on a single script for 10 years, and it's like, they're never going to finish. And that you can't let that kind of perfectionism stop you. That was my writing partner. She was always my ex-wife, my ex-writing partner. She was such a perfectionist. It was like, I had to like literally away from her. No, we're sending this out. Like, it's ready. It was like really just a battle to get, like, she was such a perfectionist. And I mean, and you need to be critical. You need to have that drive to be great. But you have to also know, like, okay, this is good. I'm going to send it. It's good. So
it's so hard to find that balance too. We already did have a writing partner podcast episode once, because Sadie and I have both written with people, and that's a whole other layer of
that would be
creation.
fun.
Yeah.
I've had the whole kind of array of writing partners, and yeah, I can share.
Yeah. Yeah,
Some
we had to do
drinks and
we had to do a lot of can I tell this story?
right.
Yeah. Like, who am I going to piss off? Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll just meet at the bar and we'll do all this off the record, because we certainly don't want to have it recorded and out there.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Well, this was so fun. And for those who, I'm holding it up, but I never put these on YouTube, so you're never going to see it. But I'll take a screenshot. Mastering Screenwriting from Shorts to Features by Donald Hewitt. Donald H. Hewitt.
Donald H. Hewitt, yes.
Donald H. Hewitt.
When I started, there was a Don Hewitt. He created 60 Minutes. Not my dad, not anybody I know. So I was couldn't go Don Hewitt, so I went Donald, and I'm like, I want something more. So I went Donald H. Hewitt as my professional name.
Well, that's why I'm Jeannie Villette Bowerman and not Jeannie Bowerman, because, well, Villette is also my maiden name, an homage to my dad, but there's a Jeannie Bowerman who writes hiking books. That's not me.
Definitely not you.
Definitely not me. You will see me hiking with my dog, but I'm not writing about it.
Awesome.
Reckless Creatives is a Pipeline Artist original podcast. Like, subscribe, and follow us on social media at Pipeline Artists. And find more info at pipelineartists.com/listen. Until next time, stay reckless.